There's an uncomfortable truth that almost no one admits. Most adults are improvising. They pay bills, drive cars, negotiate salaries, but deep down, they carry silent warning signs of insecurity. That doubt that arises before filing taxes, the embarrassment of not knowing how much to tip. The early warning signs appear as small hesitations, but no one talks about it. Because admitting you don't know seems like weakness, and that's exactly where the problem lies. Perhaps you've already felt those silent symptoms, sweaty palms before asking for a raise, a racing heart when you realize you can't identify an email scam. These are signals your body is trying to tell you something. But culture says you should already know this, so you pretend. And when we pretend too much, the hidden symptoms begin. Anxiety, hasty decisions, avoidable mistakes. The truth? Growing up doesn't come with a manual. And don't ignore that feeling that no one ever explained the basics. Today, you're going to learn what many are too embarrassed to ask. From how to negotiate money to how to exit a conversation without seeming awkward. Because there are symptoms you shouldn't ignore in adulthood, and a lack of guidance is one of them. These are early signs of an invisible gap that can be costly. But here's the quick reward. In just a few minutes, you'll master skills that will immediately change your demeanor. And honestly, when you start to see the signals your body is giving you, you realize that maturity isn't about knowing everything. It's about having the courage to learn what no one else dared to teach you. How to negotiate a salary. He knows that negotiating salary isn't just about talking numbers. It's about reading the warning signs in the environment. Even before the meeting begins, there are early warning signs. The recruiter's tone, posture, and the time they dedicate to the conversation. He understands that just like body language, the market also sends subtle messages. If he ignores these silent symptoms, he might accept less than he deserves. That's why he doesn't go in asking for a raise. He goes in prepared with data, results, and awareness. He researches average salaries on Glassdoor, talks to colleagues in the field, and notes his concrete achievements. After all, there are signs you shouldn't ignore, especially when it comes to your own career. He doesn't negotiate with raw emotion. He negotiates with strategy and serenity. When he feels that nervous feeling in his stomach, he recognizes it as one of the signals his body is telling him that this matters. But he breathes, organizes his arguments, and speaks clearly. In the last 12 months, I increased sales by 23% and reduced costs by 15%. See? He uses facts, not assumptions. He knows that accepting the first offer can be a hidden symptom of insecurity. And look, asking for what's fair isn't arrogance. It's professional maturity. If there's resistance, he asks, what do I need to achieve to reach that value in the coming months? That changes the game. He also understands that negotiating is about listening. Often the silent signals are in the pauses and the glances. If the employer hesitates, there may be room for negotiation. If they shut down quickly, perhaps it's time to propose alternative benefits. Bonuses, working from home, paid courses. He never lets the conversation end without clarity because he doesn't ignore ambiguities. They are early symptoms of future conflicts. Negotiating salary is an exercise in self-worth, but also in reading context. And when he realizes that there are disguised messages in a simple offer email, he begins to understand that not all communication is as straightforward as it seems. How to spot a scam email that isn't from a prince. He learns early on that modern scams don't start with an African prince promising fortune. They arrive discreetly, politely, sometimes even elegantly, and that's where the warning signs come in. An overly urgent email, a strange link, a subtle error in the domain. These are early warning signs that many people ignore. He understands that scams work because they exploit emotion, fear, haste, or greed. When something says, respond in 10 minutes or your account will be blocked, he stops and breathes. Because, just like the body's signals, intuition also warns when something is out of place. He observes almost invisible details, those silent symptoms that go unnoticed. The address looks official, but a letter is wrong. The logo is the same, but the layout is slightly different. These are hidden symptoms that, if ignored, are costly. He never clicks directly. He hovers the mouse over the link to verify the real destination. He never downloads unexpected attachments, and above all, he remembers. Don't ignore that slight discomfort. It may be one of the symptoms you shouldn't ignore in the digital world. Security begins with attention, not paranoia. Furthermore, he enables two-factor authentication, uses a password manager, and keeps his antivirus software updated. It may seem basic, but it's like paying attention to the signals your body is giving you before an illness worsens. Most fraud happens because someone underestimated the initial symptoms. He understands that technology is a tool, but discernment is protection. And when he realizes that even a dead battery can catch someone off guard in a parking lot, he begins to see that adult life demands preparation in seemingly simple details. How to jumpstart a car. He doesn't panic when the car won't start. He observes the warning signs, the dim dashboard light, the dry crunch when turning the key. These are early warning signs of a dead battery. He understands that, just like the body's signals, the car speaks. Ignoring these silent symptoms can leave him stranded at the worst possible moment, so he keeps a quality pair of jumper cables in the trunk and knows exactly how to use them. Preparation isn't overkill, it's practical intelligence. First, he parks the cars close together, but without touching. Then he connects the red cable to the positive terminal of the discharged battery, and then to the positive terminal of the charged battery. The black cable goes to the negative terminal of the good battery, and lastly, to a metal part of the discharged car, never directly to the negative terminal of the dead battery. It seems like a detail, but these are symptoms you shouldn't ignore when it comes to safety. He starts the car that is running and waits a few minutes. If the other engine responds, great. If not, there may be more serious hidden symptoms, such as a faulty alternator. He doesn't immediately speed off. He leaves the car running for at least 15 to 20 minutes to recharge, and he learns his lesson. Check the battery before winter. Observe the dashboard lights. Don't leave headlights on unnecessarily. These are signs that his body is telling him that responsibility prevents headaches, in this case, financial ones, because often the initial symptoms appear days before complete failure. He knows not to ignore small warnings, whether from the car or from life. And when he parks in a tight spot in the city center, he realizes that mastering the steering wheel is as strategic as mastering electricity. How to parallel park. He doesn't see parallel parking as a test of public humiliation, but as a way to read space and timing. Before turning the steering wheel, he observes the warning signs: distance between cars, traffic flow, angle of the parking space. These are early warning signs that prevent honking and scratches. He knows that just like the body's signals, the car responds to the slightest movement. If he ignores the silent symptoms, like a poorly adjusted mirror or rushing, the maneuver turns into chaos. So he adjusts the mirrors, takes a deep breath, and starts slowly, without making a scene. He aligns his car with the vehicle in front, maintains about half a meter of lateral distance, and engages reverse. When the rear window reaches the bumper of the car in front, he turns the steering wheel fully into the parking space. It looks like choreography, and in a way, it is. If he feels the front is too close to the other car, he corrects it. Because these are symptoms you shouldn't ignore. He understands that small adjustments prevent big problems, just like dealing with hidden symptoms in adult life. Parallel parking is about precision, not speed. When the car is almost aligned, he turns the steering wheel in the opposite direction and adjusts it until it's parallel to the curb. He doesn't care about the honking behind him. He knows not to ignore his own pace due to external pressure. The signals his body is giving him, tension in the shoulders, shortness of breath, indicate that it's time to slow down, not speed up. Practice transforms what seemed impossible into automatic, and the initial symptoms of insecurity disappear. And if parking requires method, dealing with numbers and taxes requires even more attention to invisible details. How to do your taxes. He doesn't leave taxes until the last night, like someone pushing a problem aside, hoping it will disappear. He knows that delays and fines are warning signs of financial disorganization. Even before the deadline arrives, he has already gathered receipts, bank statements, and proof of payment. These are early warning signs that he is in control. Just like bodily signals, finances also send messages. If he ignores the silent symptoms, like small, unrecorded expenses, he may end up paying more than he should. Organization is disguised economy. He uses simple tools, such as Excel spreadsheets or applications like TurboTax or equivalent programs in his country. If he has doubts, he consults an accountant, because there are symptoms you shouldn't ignore when it comes to the Internal Revenue Service. A number entered incorrectly can become a headache months later, and these are hidden symptoms that only appear when it's too late. He reviews each piece of data calmly, checks CPF, Brazilian Individual Taxpayer Registration Number, CNPJ, Brazilian Company Taxpayer Registration Number, values and deductions. It seems tedious, but it's strategic. He understands that filing correctly is an act of maturity, not just a legal obligation. He also learns about possible deductions, education, health, dependence. He reads reliable sources, keeps up with changes in legislation, and develops the habit of keeping documents throughout the year. Because don't ignore small details. They are like initial symptoms of a bigger problem. When he feels anxious dealing with numbers, he recognizes it as one of the signs his body is telling him that he needs method, not escape. And after resolving this bureaucratic part of adult life, he realizes that leaving a job requires as much planning as filing taxes. How to quit a job gracefully. He doesn't quit on impulse, even when there are warning signs in the workplace. Before making any decision, he observes the early warning signs: constant lack of recognition, broken promises, a recurring toxic environment. Just like the body's signals, a career also gives indications of wear and tear. If he ignores these silent symptoms, he might burn bridges, or worse, leave unprepared. So he plans. He updates his resume, activates his LinkedIn network, and talks to mentors. Quitting isn't an escape, it's a strategy. He schedules a formal meeting with his manager and communicates clearly and respectfully. No indirect messages or overly cold emails. He says something like, "I'm grateful for the experience, but I've decided to pursue a new career path." Simple, direct, and elegant. Because there are signs you shouldn't ignore, especially when reputation is involved. Leaving in a fight is one of the hidden symptoms of emotional immaturity. He keeps his notice period, documents processes, and leaves doors open. The world is smaller than it seems, and references matter. He also prepares the emotional side because he shouldn't ignore the psychological impact of a change. There may be insecurity, fear, or even guilt. These are natural initial symptoms of transition. He observes the signals his body is giving him: sleepless nights, constant tension, deep demotivation. Sometimes these are the real reasons for the decision. By leaving with dignity, he strengthens his professional image. And when he learns to close cycles with class, he realizes that even a simple conversation at the end of the day can require similar tact. How to end a conversation. He understands that ending a conversation is almost an invisible art. There are clear warning signs, repeated glances at the watch, increasingly shorter answers, the body already pointing towards the exit. These are early warning signs that the dialogue needs an end. Just like body language, communication also reveals subtle discomforts. Ignoring these silent symptoms can transform a pleasant conversation into something tiresome. So he observes, senses the atmosphere, and decides to act with elegance. He doesn't disappear abruptly, nor does he feign an imaginary phone call. He says something simple and honest. "I love talking to you, but I need to take care of something now." See, direct, respectful, and light. Because there are signs you shouldn't ignore when it comes to personal boundaries. Prolonging conversations for fear of seeming rude is one of the hidden symptoms of social insecurity. He maintains eye contact, smiles, and ends firmly. Good manners aren't submission, they're balance. He also learns to read the signals his body is giving him. Mental fatigue, increasing distraction, loss of focus. These are early signs that it's time to end things, and he remembers, don't ignore your energy just to please others. Well-ended conversations preserve relationships. And when he starts paying attention to these social details, he realizes that even something seemingly simple, like leaving an appropriate tip, carries invisible codes that few explain. How to tip properly. He understands that tipping isn't just a formality. It's about understanding the context and respecting the work of others. There are warning signs that show when the service has gone beyond the basics. Attention to detail, genuine cordiality, and efficiency even under pressure. These are early warning signs that someone has truly dedicated themselves. Just like body language, the environment also transmits subtle messages. Ignoring these silent symptoms is closing your eyes to invisible effort. And maturity is recognizing value where many don't see it. He knows the general rule, 10% to 20% in restaurants in the United States, for example, but understands that percentages aren't mechanical. If the service was exceptional, he adjusts upwards. If there were serious flaws, he assesses fairly, because there are symptoms you shouldn't ignore, including when the service was disrespectful. Still, he differentiates human error from bad faith. Sometimes, the hidden symptoms of rushed service are simply too many tables or understaffed. He observes before judging. He also pays attention to the signals his own body is giving him. Embarrassment at not knowing how much to tip. Doubt when seeing the machine suggesting amounts. These are early symptoms that no one taught him these rules clearly. And he learns because he shouldn't ignore small social etiquettes. They build a silent reputation. Tipping is about reciprocity and social awareness. And by mastering these nuances, he realizes that many of the things that seem obvious in adult life were never really taught. If you've made it this far, it's because you've realized something few admit. Growing up isn't automatic. Adult life doesn't come with a manual, but it sends warning signals all the time. Small hesitations, silent doubts, that discomfort before making simple decisions. These are early warning signs that there's always something new to learn. And you decided not to ignore it. You decided to look at the silent symptoms of insecurity and transform them into awareness. That already changes your stance in the world. Notice how you now see details that previously went unnoticed. The body's signals when you need to negotiate, the hidden symptoms in a suspicious email, the initial signs of a conversation that needs to end. You've realized that maturity isn't the absence of doubt. It's knowing that there are signs you shouldn't ignore. And when you choose to learn the basics in depth, you start playing a different game. A more strategic, more conscious, more truly adult game. Now I ask you, how many decisions have you made in the past simply because you were ashamed to ask? How many signals your body is giving you have you ignored? If this content has opened your mind, then don't ignore the next step. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue learning what nobody teaches, but everyone should know. Because here, we transform doubt into clarity, and clarity into power.